The DNC says it is creating a cybersecurity task force in response. In Washington, Rich Edson, Fox News.
You're watching WITI Milwaukee. When it matters to you, it matters to us. Fox 6 News, because you matter. Fox 6 News at 10 starts right now.
We are following breaking news of a disturbance tonight in the area of Sherman and Auer.
This is video posted to Facebook tonight of the scene. Witnesses tell us dozens of people have assembled in the area, as have a large number of police officers. At this point, we know that a car has been set on fire. Right now, you're seeing live pictures. The bricks have been thrown at a Milwaukee fire truck. The Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office tells us they are sending all available squads as well as heavy equipment to assist Milwaukee police on the scene.
Yeah, so that's the live picture down there. You're seeing things burning. Now, this is how it all started. Hours earlier, that area was the scene of an officer-involved shooting. One man was killed by police, another was arrested.
Our Ashley Sears was there as the situation became tense. She has now left that area due to safety concerns, and she joins us now from District 1 with the latest. Ashley?
Yeah, it has been a volatile evening. Police advised us it would not be safe for us to stay on the scene. That is when we came here. Here's a look at an MPD tweet from tonight. A squad had its windows smashed. Another was set on fire. It has been very tense following this officer-involved shooting. Police tape blocks several streets as officers and squads line the scene near 44th and Auer.
I heard bang, 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 3 shots, and I knew they were gunshots.
Maxine Jeter heard them from her backyard. She quickly grabbed her 4-year-old great-granddaughter and ran inside.
It sounded too close to us. This time it was just so close that we went in the house and locked the door.
Police say around 3:30 Saturday afternoon, 2 officers attempted to stop a vehicle when the 2 men inside ran.
One man was armed with a handgun. The officer confronted that man in a gangway, and the officer fired shots, and that man is deceased.
Police say the 23-year-old was armed with a stolen weapon. They were unable to say whether he fired it at the officer.
The gun at the scene that we are recovering was stolen in a burglary from, I believe, Waukesha, along with 500 rounds of ammunition.
As the man's family arrives to the scene, emotions are high. Trying to understand what took place, Jeter watches.
This is too much.
Saddened by the violence in her neighborhood, hopeful it will soon end.
This brings us to tears.
We have a crew out there right now. This is a live picture of a car that has been set on fire near 44th and Auer. We will be monitoring this situation throughout the night and bring you updates as this story develops. Reporting live downtown, Ashley Sears, Fox 6 News.
All right, Ashley, again, we want to take another look at this situation here again. Here is a live picture that we are looking at from the scene. This is near 44th and Auer. Obviously a large Milwaukee police presence, and you can see that looks like a burnt out car in that location.
And you can see there's a concentration of squads going to that area, so I'm not sure if they actually see. Oh, there you see it right there.
Yeah, you can see what looks like a van on the left side of your screen that's burning.
And maybe even 2 vehicles.
Yeah, and we have had reports that this started as a group of about 25 to 50 people, and there were reports that there were rocks and bricks being thrown first at police officers, and then we had reports that there was a fire to a car, and when the firefighters came in, there were bricks thrown at them as well. Ashley Sears was down on this scene earlier. It just became too dangerous, so we've moved her farther away from the scene, and you can see police look like they are in their riot gear tonight.
Yeah, when police first got there, they were, regular uniforms, but as things began to escalate, then we started seeing the riot gear coming out.
This has been an incredibly violent 24 hours in Milwaukee. There were 9 shootings. That's separate from the officer-involved shooting. 5 of those were homicides. So Milwaukee police, they were busy well before the officer-involved shooting, which happened this afternoon. That happening with a man in his 20s. The officer was also in his 20s. And then the scene became very hectic and very tense. It was tense throughout the afternoon. Ashley Sears moving away from the scene at about 7 o'clock tonight, and that's when reports that bricks started to be thrown. And now you are looking at the Milwaukee Police Department in a large line. They are looking like they're moving right towards some of those crowds and towards that fire that we're seeing on your screen.
This scene, you know, it looks like some of the things that we've seen in other incidents in other parts of the country, where the officers with their riot gear walking in a line towards the protesters out there right now. As a matter of fact, you were mentioning that we have 9 shootings overnight. Besides this one, the officer-involved shooting, and 5 homicides, and there was a homicide, I think, like a block from where this is happening.
Yeah, and just to tell you where this is very close to the Sherman Park neighborhood, and there you can see the fire that's burning down there. Sherman Park, a little bit of history. That's been a trouble spot this entire summer. In June, we had reported that large crowds of teenagers had gathered and they got into some fights, and when police showed up, they started throwing rocks at police then. That night ended with just a couple of people detained, and in the days that followed, the community members really had calmed down this area. But with the tension that we saw today with the officer-involved shooting, obviously things have changed in this neighborhood tonight.
We're going to pull Ashley back in, and I was listening to her report earlier, and she was talking to some of the residents in that area, and you can just see the frustration that they're going with to see their neighborhood with the shootings and the homicides taking place, and now this incident that we're seeing right here unfolding before us live on screen. Ashley, are you still there?
Yeah, I am here. We spoke with a neighbor earlier today. She was brought to tears just talking about the violence that she's seen in that area over the last few months. She said especially it came to a head kind of in the last 24 hours. There was a homicide just blocks away from there. She said she arrived home and saw police tape yesterday, and then she stepped outside today and heard gunshots fired, and she just said it's very frustrating. The whole neighborhood is frustrated by everything going on there. And when we were there, you mentioned things became pretty tense. We were there as the family of the man killed by that Milwaukee police officer arrived on the scene. Very emotional. There was some shouting. We've seen this before when police arrive to a scene and see that their loved one has died. But things got pretty tense, so we had to move to another area of the scene about a block away, which was much safer over there. But then at one point, we were told by officers that they would be leaving the scene and it would probably not be safe for us to stay out there. And that's when we moved here to Milwaukee Police Headquarters. And we've just been monitoring this from afar. We've heard reports of, squads on fire, cars on fire, bricks thrown at the Milwaukee Fire Department truck out there. We also heard reports that a news crew may have been jumped as well. Just a tense situation.
Yeah, and just to catch everyone up to speed, if you're just joining us, this is unrest. You're watching live pictures right now from 44th and Hour. This is near the scene of where an officer-involved shooting took place this afternoon. We are seeing, as you can see right now live on your screen, the Milwaukee police officers in their riot gear, and there is a large fire out there. And some people may be wondering, why are we not seeing any firefighters? Well, in situations like this, sometimes the firefighters don't feel safe, and we have had reports that when firefighters moved in to put out a car fire earlier in the night, bricks were thrown at some of the trucks. We have seen, and you can see there's a police officer in the fire right in the background there. We have seen some of the damage. We've seen pictures of Milwaukee police squads with some bricks thrown in, and like we said, there's been reports of the fire trucks.
As you said that, let me just break in right now. We have a report that an officer has been hit with a brick and is being treated for that. I believe the brick went through the squad, and we saw a picture earlier where the windshield was broken from possibly a brick. And I'm not sure if that was the same squad that the officer was in and got hurt, but an officer has been hurt and has gone for treatment in this incident.
You're seeing a pretty sizable fire in the center of your screen. I want to bring Ashley Sears back in here because she was on scene of the officer-involved shooting right from the get-go this afternoon. And Ashley, did it just seem like the tension was growing as the afternoon went on?
Yes, as I said, when we moved from one block to the other, it seemed to diffuse a little bit, but from afar, we were behind the tape, we could see more and more police officers arrive. We saw some riot gear being brought out, but we didn't see it being used while we were still out there. And then we saw the sheriff's department come on scene, and then we saw fire trucks come on scene. So at one point, we started to think, this may be a little bit more than what we had anticipated earlier in the afternoon. And then, as I said, Milwaukee police advised us it may not be safe out there, and that we should head out. As we were leaving, we saw large crowds still gathered, and we were told that those crowds continued to grow.
And at this point, I mean, we're still looking at this fire, and we're not seeing fire trucks or water going on. And the fire truck did try to get in there earlier and was, bricks were thrown, so they had to pull back. At this point, it could be a situation where it's just too unsafe for them to come in.
Yeah, and again, we've seen large crowds in the Sherman Park area in the summer, but Milwaukee has really been fortunate. Even going back to the Dontre Hamilton situation, that was a gentleman who was killed by Milwaukee police, and we saw some unrest in the streets. That was really focused in downtown. Everything was pretty much peaceful. There was one incident where people went on the interstate and were arrested. But Milwaukee's been fortunate that we haven't seen unrest really lead to fires or this kind of damage. And now you can hear some of what I believe are the fire trucks in the background there. But once again, this is 44th and Hour, very close to the scene of where Sherman and Hour, the officer-involved shooting took place just a few blocks away at 44th and Hour this afternoon. Then we saw large crowds gather, a lot of young people out, and then we saw bricks started being thrown, and now we are seeing some fires right now live on your television screen.
This has been a really... go ahead, Ashley.
I was going to jump in here. You talked about the crowds gathering. I just wanted to mention that we saw a lot of cars driving by as well. It seemed to be gawkers, and a lot of people just kind of started walking over, getting a sense of what was going on. It was much larger than what you would see on a normal police situation, a normal officer-involved shooting. Just the crowds kept coming, and there was a lot of traffic in the area as well. And from what we could see, it looked like the people started spilling out into the street on Sherman around 6 or 7 o'clock tonight. So it just, you could feel the tension in the air, and you knew something might be happening.
I don't know if things are starting to diffuse a little bit, because earlier we saw the officers kind of in a line marching maybe towards people, towards protesters, if there are any out there, and now we don't see that. We just see them just kind of standing in a group. So hopefully things are about to level out.
We have put a call into the Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office. They say they are assisting the Milwaukee Police Department tonight, but it really is a Milwaukee Police Department scene. As you see our camera now go up to show you kind of how high the flames and smoke are leaving the area. But this is been a very tense evening, and yeah, like Bev said, it does look like the situation where we just saw police officers moving around the block. Now we just saw a long line of police officers in riot gear kind of standing around.
Hopefully things are, I don't see as many people out as well. So maybe this is kind of the end of what has been a violent weekend. Again, and I say a violent weekend because last night we had 9 shootings, 5 homicides. And Ashley, that was the story that you were covering earlier today, correct?
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you there.
Well, we were talking about there were 9 shootings overnight in, I guess, a 12-hour period, 5 homicides, and then the officer-involved shooting. And that's where you came in. You were covering the officer-involved shooting.
Yeah, we arrived on the scene shortly after 4 o'clock. The officer-involved shooting happened around 3:30, so we arrived there pretty early on. One man was killed by a police officer. We were told that he had a weapon. He was driving in a car with another man, we're told, and at one point they got out and ran, police say, and when an officer confronted him, he showed his weapon, and that is when that man was shot and killed. Police say that weapon was stolen from Waukesha, and they've been out there on the scene. As family arrived, very, very emotional out there. Crowds began to gather, and we had to move to the other side of the street. Now, since I've been out here, though, at Milwaukee Police headquarters, I did get a text from someone who was out there saying, you know, where are your news crews? And I was texting back and forth with her. And then at one point she said, you know, it's just a bunch of teenagers out here. It's not safe for me to be out here. I need to leave. So, you know, the situation is pretty volatile down there. And I don't know, you know, who's involved or how many people are involved, but it seems tense.
Ashley, I just want to break in here. We now have a new update from the Milwaukee Police Department, and we now know what we're looking at, what is burning live on the screens. You saw some images shortly. This from the Milwaukee Police. They say the gas station at Sherman and Burleigh set on fire. The Milwaukee Fire Department cannot extinguish fire as gunshots are being fired. That is actually a gas station that we know very well. This is right across from Sherman Park, and we have covered stories at this gas station a few weeks ago when some teens had showed up to the gas station. The owner, or a clerk from that gas station had come outside with his handgun, fired it in the air to scare off the teens, and that caused a boycott at this gas station as neighbors were very angry that the clerk was then firing his gun with kids around.
Right, and then there seemed to be some kind of understanding as the community and the gas station owner came together and talked, and I think they even had a little cookout together.
Right, they had a cookout. And we remember the clerk actually got fired. The owner, who was a family member, fired the clerk who fired the weapon, and that clerk actually met with the district attorney about him using his weapon, which of course is illegal. But you are looking at live pictures right now near Sherman and Auer. This is the BP gas station that's been on fire now for some time as there is unrest after this officer-involved shooting. We also know from the Milwaukee Police Department that an officer is undergoing treatment at a local hospital after a brick was thrown through a squad window, striking the officer in the head. And Ashley, I do want to go back out to you because that is a story you covered closely.
Ben, I just wanted to add, I did talk to a community activist out at this scene tonight who was asking why we weren't at this Sherman Park. There was a peace rally over there tonight, and he said a bunch of people had gathered at this event, so tonight was supposed to be peaceful, and it's just sad that now we're hearing that it's turned violent in that same area where hours earlier there was this peaceful gathering.
And we know this has been a violent place in the last 24 hours. There was a homicide overnight. This was part of a very violent 24 hours in the city where we saw 9 shootings, not including the officer-involved shooting. That would make it 10. There were 5 homicides, and this was an area that was very tense. And Ashley, you talked about it earlier. From the moment you arrived at the scene, you knew that the tension was high down at the officer-involved shooting, which is just blocks from where this BP gas station is burning near 44th and Auer, right? Can you talk about the tension?
Yes, when we arrived, we spoke with some neighbors who were visibly upset just by all of the violence in the area. And then at one point, family started to arrive and some friends started to arrive. There was screaming and there was crying. There was some confrontations between some people who say they were family of this man and police officers trying to cross the police tape. We were there as the people who say they were the mother and the grandfather arrived, who were yelling for answers, and we saw a lot of tears being shed. A lot of friends started to gather, and it got very loud very quickly, and at one point an officer pulled me aside and said, hey, you might want to move to the other side over there. We don't want you getting hurt and all this. So we moved over there and kind of watched it from afar. We did ask MPD at this news conference earlier today about, the volatility, and they said everything was under control. So we watched from afar as they brought riot gear in, and we started to think that, the tension may be growing, and we were going to be monitoring that.
Right. We're continue to look at the live pictures, and of course, the gas station is on fire, and this kind of puts you in mind of some of the pictures that you've seen around the country, but you don't see people breaking windows and this kind of thing. It looks like people are just kind of milling around and looking at what's happened.
And we have seen some very heavy equipment. You can see two very heavy pieces of equipment from, that looks like it's the sheriff and police officers' equipment that is down there. And we've seen police in some of their riot gear this afternoon. Just to bring everybody back a little bit, it all started this afternoon. We were reporting all day on the 9 shootings and the 5 homicides, and that's when there were reports of an officer-involved shooting. We sent our crew down there. There was a news conference, and then now you can see later in the night, that is a live picture of the BP gas station at Sherman and Hour that is on fire, and the Milwaukee Police Department telling us firefighters can't go in to put out that fire because there have been reports of some gunshots tonight.
And now that we know that it is the BP station, it makes more sense to see, several vehicles on fire because they were probably, trying to pump some gas.
Right, and we had reports earlier that there was a separate car that was on fire early on, and the Milwaukee Fire Department went in to try to put that out, and that's when bricks were thrown at them. So this is a very tough night if you're a family member or you're someone who is in law enforcement or in the fire department, as this area has been very tense, and we're hoping for the best tonight, that everyone stays calm. And you may be asking, man, what can I do to help? If you're a mother out there who has a teenager, you may want to call them and just make sure they come home tonight because they don't want to be near this scene that there's been reports of shots fired, and just want to make sure everyone stays safe in what's become a very tense evening on Milwaukee's northwest side.
And when we've heard of the shots fired, we've heard of shots fired up in the air. We haven't heard of anyone else being hit tonight, which that's a good thing. Right.
The only report of injury right now coming from the Milwaukee Police Department, they do say an officer was hit with an object or a brick and is at the local hospital being treated for their injuries. Right now, this is live pictures you're watching here on Fox 6 of the area at Sherman and Hour, and you may be wondering, where are the police? We saw large lines of heavily armed police officers on the right side of your screen, and they've kind of stayed in a line on that end of it, and they're kind of sitting back and waiting for this situation to get safer to fight that fire there.
And I hear a lot of fire engines coming through, so it must be safe enough for the fire trucks to come in and tackle this fire.
Right, and to get into this area. And let's bring Ashley Sears back in, who's been following this, and to give us a few more details for people who may just be joining us on what started this all, the officer-involved shooting. And I know, Ashley, it started with a press conference from police in the afternoon.
Yeah, I just wanted to start by saying I think you guys might be hearing the fire trucks. We're near a fire station here, and as they're passing by us, I think our microphones are picking that up. I don't believe that there are fire trucks on the scene there.
Okay, good correction there.
Yeah, so it's all by us here. I just wanted to say how heartbreaking this is for some of the residents out there. We spoke with some older residents who say they lived there for 50-plus years, and they've just been watching all of this violence unfold in front of them, and they don't want to move from the area. They have beautiful homes. They've lived there forever. They've raised family. Their children have come back to that area, and they're frustrated. And they say, I spoke with a woman tonight who says, she wants to get a block watch together and kind of take back the neighborhood. And she said, a lot of people think we're older, we're retired, but it's time for us to go to work again, and that work might be bringing peace to the neighborhood. But she said they're up for the challenge, and they want to do this. So we're thinking a lot about those residents who are older, who are in their homes watching this happen in front of them from their windows, who just think to themselves, what has happened to my neighborhood, and what are the next steps to make it safe?
Right, and in that area, you have younger people who have moved in, gotten their homes with their families, and they have young children, and young children are seeing this. So this is a sad day in Milwaukee.
And that woman I spoke with had her great-granddaughter with her this morning or this afternoon, and she said it was supposed to be a fun day. She had her granddaughter in the backyard. They were playing in a pool waiting for a friend to arrive, and that's when she heard some gunshots, and you know, she said it was sad. She had to bring her daughter in the home and call the friend, or her granddaughter rather, in the home, call the friend and say, you know, it's not safe for you to be out here. And she had tears in her eyes telling me that, you know, it was supposed to be this beautiful fun day, and it turned into this, and now seeing what unfolded, I'm sure she's even more saddened by that.
And actually, I know that you've spent some time at Sherman Park, and this is right in the Sherman Park area. Can you talk about how busy that area is with families just on a normal weekend, on a normal Saturday? Because obviously it turned into a beautiful day out there today, and this is a place where people really in this community gather.
Yeah, speaking with people just throughout the last couple of months, as we saw some volatility down at that park. Neighbors in the area said this is a place they like to bring their families, hang out, play on the playground, and they started to see kind of a shift. Some teenagers hanging out in the area, the teenagers saying, you know, they were misunderstood, they weren't there to be up to no good. We did see that kind of come to a head earlier this summer, where there was a confrontation with some teens out there and police, and there were some activists who decided they wanted to take back that park, so they were doing their own monitoring of the park, going there on a weekly, daily basis to make sure the situation was safe. But neighbors saying, you know, they didn't feel safe going to the park at some points. So today was supposed to be a peace rally out there, and it turned into this.
And I do want to take everybody back just a few weeks about Sherman Park. This is a place we've reported on this summer. A few weeks ago, there were large gatherings of teens out there, and there were some reports that some had gotten into some fights. And when police arrived, bricks were thrown at them. That was back in June. That night was a very different night. Obviously, we did see some police in their riot gear that night as bricks were being thrown at them, but only a couple of teens were detained. Fast forward a few more weeks, this gas station that you are now looking live at that is caught on fire, that was the spot of some headlines after a group of teens had come into the gas station at night, and the clerk at the gas station grabbed his gun and fired it into the air. That really angered some parents, who then had a boycott of the gas station for several days. And from that point on, there was actually a great moment of the community where the community met with the owner of the gas station who fired the clerk, and there was a moment with them coming together and working it out.
And having like a cookout, so the boycott was over. And there was some agreement there. So it's really sad to see this happening here tonight. And one good thing that Ashley mentioned, that there was a peace rally planned for today. And we have folks coming together within this city trying to make a difference and turn things around and reduce the violence that's going on. And hopefully, with seeing what's going on here tonight, that will only increase and not decrease, because obviously it is needed.
And I can tell you from the reaction we're seeing on Twitter and Facebook right now, there are a lot of people in the community heartbroken to see this scene right in the heart of Sherman Park neighborhood, right near the park where people gather on Saturdays to have a great time. But this has also been a spot that has had some trouble. There was a homicide in the area overnight, and then this officer-involved shooting, which really sparked the frustration that we started seeing this afternoon, and then the tension started to grow. Then throughout the evening, when the sun went down, there were reports that some bricks were starting to be thrown. We had to move our Ashley Sears and her photographer away from the scene because it just was not safe. And now we're seeing some fires and police in their riot gear. And you're seeing on the left side of the screen, that is the video from the officer-involved shooting scene that happened this afternoon, where a gentleman in his 20s with a handgun was shot by a Milwaukee police officer. And we've seen crowds grow since that happened this afternoon.
So I'm sure people were angry about what was happening. And when there is an officer-involved shooting, you know, you don't get a whole lot of information right away because there's an investigation. And without getting the information that a lot of people would want, there is frustration. Why this happened, you know, the BP station set on fire, not sure.
And we don't, and obviously hundreds of people live in this blocks and in these communities, and it doesn't take very many to make it turn south and turn into an awful situation very quickly. The early reports from this